Hello, I'm Terry David Mulligan, and this is the Mulligan's 2 podcast. And there are times when we do film and wine and food and celebrities in all fields. We do a lot of music interviews. This one is a one-off music interview conversation. It's with Terry Wickham, who is the artistic director and producer and the driving force behind the very successful Edmonton Folk Festival, like really successful. And we both heard the news at the same time. Probably Terry did before I ever did, about the possible demise of the Vancouver Folk Festival, which is just as old and had been very successful and a landmark in the music business and in Vancouver for many, many, many years. That gorgeous site on Jericho Beach. And they announced that they could not make their funding, and they were about to pack it in. Now, the story is still unfolding as I talk to you, but I immediately wanted to talk to Terry because it's not just about the Vancouver Folk Festival, it's about the other festivals. How are they doing? How will this affect them? Will we be seeing the same sort of artist level of talent coming through? All the questions that I had, Terry Wickham had the answer for, which is why I went to him. Here's Terry Wickham in conversation about the future of folk festivaling in particular across Canada and maybe around the world. My name is Terry David Mulligan. This is the Mulligan's 2 podcast. If you've been reading either on a screen or newspapers or just word of mouth, you'll know that the Vancouver Folk Festival, as we speak, has decided that they cannot continue for the 2023 season, and they will make up their mind on February the 1st whether they will continue on at all. And they've been doing this for 40 plus years. Nobody's talking on that side, and I understand that. They have to get their answers in line. However, I've immediately thought of Terry Wickham, who is the producer and general manager and artistic director of the Edmonton Folk Festival. He has been kind enough to join me here on a Zoom call now that we have our technical issues out of the way. Hello, Terry. How did you receive that news about Vancouver, or was it not a surprise?
I knew it was being discussed. It's been discussed in Vancouver for a long time, but more seriously now. But it came as a shock and sad news. I mean, Vancouver is a leader. I mean, we copied their environmental program, their access program, when we went there in 1989. That's how long ago they were doing it. And then we brought it in. All the festivals share best practices. But, it was a leader among festivals. It was a fun place to go. I feel sorry for the fans, and I feel sorry for musicians, and, I feel sorry for the staff. They did heroic efforts to get it back up and running and successful in 2022. But the business has changed.
How has it changed? In what ways?
It's more expensive. Tour buses, hotels, flights, insurance, when you can get it. Everything is more expensive. Service charges, fees, especially. People kind of held the line in 2020, but now they're going, well, now fees have been let loose. And in fairness, their expenses are higher. If I was paying someone 10, I may be paying them 12 now. And I don't mind doing that because the flights are more expensive, and I don't want people to go away without losing money. But at the top end, fees are, if you're a Springsteen now or, Taylor Swift, I mean, it's dynamic pricing. So the scalpers have become the ticket sellers, Live Nation buying Ticketmaster. It's all the one now around the world. So, and it's demand and supply. If people will keep buying those VIP tickets and those tickets close to the stage and the dynamic pricing, then it's not going to change. The only way that changes is if people stop buying. But you get a town like New York or something and say Springsteen is going in there. Well, how many people want to see him in New York?
Yeah.
Maybe the venue holds 20,000, so you can do a week. Anyway, for a festival like Vancouver, a lot of things have, prices. Really what it's gone is that suppliers want cash in advance. So you have to be able to put the money up front. And Vancouver's come through a period where now they finally settled their books, but they're looking going forward and they're saying, how can we pay all the fees in advance? They did that from the box office. And Vancouver's an expensive town. I mean, you're up against the movie business, maybe other festivals. It's a big town to get around, so it's harder for volunteers to go to meetings. I mean, these kind of festivals, community, and I mean community in a large sense, like in a city, they're very important. If we lose them, it's going to be like Joni Mitchell. You don't know what you've got till it's gone. But we are swimming against the currents of, even with other festivals, VIP tickets where people will pay $800 or $1,500 for three people to get served their own drinks at a table, whatever it is. I don't even know what it is now. It's just, and it's US dollars. So it's hard to compete on that level. But, I've heard big bands come into Edmonton and I've heard them say, or I've heard the story that they've said this is real, which everything's real, but they can feel it's from the ground up and it's volunteers and it's a community effort and it's it's sad. If it doesn't go ahead in 2022, it's very difficult to resurrect a festival a year later because you start to lose your funding. And I do think funding is one of the problems that the Vancouver Festival have had for a long time. When I ever looked at the books, and we share a lot of information, but not in the last few years. I'm not kind of privy a little bit to what happened this year, but not everything. But last time I looked, the funding from the city was very poor. The funding from the province was very poor for festivals in general too. And I don't understand that in a rich province where there's tourism, there's a lot of wealth. I don't understand why BC doesn't, at least historically that I know of, doesn't fund its festivals very well.
I'm Terry David Mulligan, and he, of course, is Terry Wickham, general manager, producer, and artistic director of the Edmonton Folk Festival. Everything you've said to me at this point makes sense, as it always does, but how does it affect all of the other festivals? Because you at times, traded artistic talent and they moved laterally across the country back and forth. How does it affect everybody else?
Well, as I say, first of all, there's sadness on the festival's part. We've lost a sister.
Yeah.
And Vancouver was a leader back in '89. Edmonton, I went there my first year and I copied their environmental program and their access program. They were leading in those kind of areas. It was a very joyful, fun event to go to. So there was that kind of shock. The other major Western festivals are doing well these days, but the model has changed. Prices have gone way up. We're not facing 8% inflation in production costs. We're facing 25 to 50%, depending on which area you look at. Electricity prices, gas prices, insurance, rent, hotel rooms, flights, everything, right?
Porta potties.
Yeah. Well, everything, anything, and rentals, tent rentals, just everything's gone up. It's gone way up because it's not 1 year's inflation, it's three really. And it's like our wholesale food prices in Edmonton, where we feed 3,000 people at a meal, they went up 30%. So I looked at our kitchen guy and said, well, your budget's gone up 30% then too. But we were fortunate. We had a really strong box office and people bought in advance. So we were able to do that. And that's what Vancouver's talking about, cash flow. People want money up ahead. Agents for artists want money up ahead, and fees have gone up. They were living in a very high cost environment in terms of all the rentals and production costs and the way that business has gone generally. So it's difficult to take a chance if you don't have the money in the bank to take a chance. But I think there's some responsibility here on the part of the city. Maybe they just don't care. It's possible. Vancouver is very big now. And the province, who historically anyway, and I haven't seen any changes in it, but I'm going back a few years, the province is not good funders of your arts festivals there. And I don't understand that in a rich province that is so progressive in many ways that, the arts struggle. It's like everybody goes to the beach. Anyway, that's kind of my reading of it. It's also a big city, so it's harder for community organizations to kind of get together. But hopefully there'll be a rescue plan. I think it needs governments to kind of step forward a bit. I think it needs some maybe wealthy people that will take a risk. But a lot of festivals, being down that road, you don't want it to be one person, but maybe if you spread it over 10 people with housing prices and wealth built up in Vancouver, that might happen. But if you don't go ahead in 2023, it's very hard to go ahead for 24 because you'll lose whatever funding you have. Then you have to start again.
Yeah.
And that's, I wouldn't like to try and start a festival. It's one thing to run them, and it is more difficult. Everybody will tell you, we're dealing with climate change. We're dealing with Ticketmaster and Live Nation particularly dominating the market. But we give breaks to aspiring musicians. Dan Mangan was talking about how important it was to his career playing the Vancouver Festival.
That's true. That's one of the first places we all discovered him. He had his own audience then, but he doubled it and tripled it and went through the roof. For example, I was trying to have a conversation with someone. I said, here's an example. If one of the festivals wants to book Bonnie Raitt, whose of course rate continues to go up, does it help that, or the only way that we can do that is if we all book her? If Winnipeg books her, and Vancouver books her, and Edmonton books her, does that?
No, you're talking. Even in that period, and you're five. That's a 5-week time period. So musicians could have gone to Tokyo in Europe and be sitting in their, at home in the meantime. And, most bands will make money sometimes 7 days a week, but often like 5 out of 7. They have some travel days, catch up, voices, all that. You could have a look at any tour schedules on Polestar and it would tell you, but everybody's different. If it's an aspiring musician, they might be playing every night. So it's not going to hurt us on a booking level, but it is a canary in a coal mine for all of us to say, where we let children in for free, where you're allowed to bring your own water, bring your own food. We don't charge $50 for a t-shirt. Yeah. It's affordable for families. And you know what? You get the best seats. If you're lucky, at a festival, you get a good draw. It's, there's no VIP seating. That's not the richer people that are sitting up front. It's whoever's keener and goes down in the morning for a draw and gets a really good draw for their tarp, and then they can bring 8 friends. So we're unique. And that's what I mean. We're a salmon going against a stream. There's lots of beautiful things about folk festivals, and I hate to see any of them fail. And Vancouver in particular, because it's, it was such a leader. And, maybe it's a shockwave, and maybe, it's never too late. If some confluence of money came together, you could put a show together in July. I mean, there's still time. You're certainly behind the 8 ball, but you still could.
If you were asked to speak to the February the 1st board meeting that Vancouver's going to do, and if you accepted it and felt comfortable doing it, say from Zoom, what would you tell that room?
Well, first of all, I know there's going to be a huge amount of Vancouver experience there, so I can throw my 2 pence worth in. But I would say, first of all, you don't have a lot of experienced people in the room that know that festival and know it much better than I, and in fact started it. Some of the ideas might be, like I say, which I'm sure it's not a genius to think of this. They'll have thought of themselves. If they can get 10 people that will come forward and kind of be a guarantor for $50,000 each. Yeah. Not everybody can. A lot of people can do that, but some can, and it's not a big thing. Or some company, someone that whatever. Yeah. Some artists, although they have to be a rich artist. I would look at maybe doing a fundraising concert on the Thursday night, try and get a big name and do a kind of a percentage deal. And I don't mind saying this because I'm not going to the meeting. I don't. But you could maybe try, do the regular festival and do a fundraising concert on Thursday night. But you go in low risk. You maybe approach Sarah McLaughlin and say, "Hey, will you pay for a percentage? You take 50% of the gate. We'll take 50% of the gate. And if it sells well, everybody does well." Because you already have the stage there. You have the sound system there. Yeah. You have a lot of the costs there. You have the audience, the volunteers to take care of it. You've got the publicity, so it doesn't cost nearly as much to do the show. You're not starting from scratch and trying to build it from a greenfield site. It's there for Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So try and get someone that'll come in, understands what festivals are about, give you a good deal, and no lose deal where they call the back end in festivals is where the artist comes in for a low fee, but it sells really well, and then they get they can get a lot more money on the other side. So something like that might be a possibility, just to kick in new money and see what happens and introduce a new audience to the festival.
And maybe a 50-50?
Well, yeah, the bigger the crowd, the bigger the 50-50. So what you want to do on Thursday is get a big crowd. Sure, you can do a 50-50. We did it with Edmonton this year, and we brought in $160,000. But the The person in between gets 10%, and the winner walks away. I mean, we had someone walk away with 79,000 plus change, and I believe it's non-taxable. So we're not for profit, so it's all good. Well, we made 40%, so whatever 40%, yeah. So we made $64,000 on it or something.
Terry Wickham talking to me. We're talking about the folk festivals this summer, this year, the future. We're talking about touring and bands. I'm trying to get a sense of. I have a sense, but I'm trying to get a sense of how much touring has changed. I can see the changes. Some of them are some of them are hidden. Are you okay with the shape of touring and artists and audience and COVID and everything else that goes into it?
Yeah, I mean, there's COVID's still around, but hopefully you're fully vaccinated, and that will, more or less cut down the severity of it. Artists obviously are very careful. I still mask backstage. If anybody's masking, I'll mask. I mask in Safeway when I'm going shopping.
Yeah.
Like whatever, everybody's comfort level is different. It's more expensive to tour. I'm not getting as many shows. I only work at the Winspear, so I've got a very small look out of it. But the top end of the market's doing very well. The middle, it's like financially, the middle is a bit soft. I've heard stories of folk musicians going out and paid all their bills, but came back because they paid a band and they don't have any money. They literally played for nothing. Merch is important, I get that. So I don't really know too much from the artist side. I do know that, and I would say that all the other folk festivals at this point that I know, whether it's Regina, Calgary, Winnipeg, Edmonton, it's the smaller one, South Country Fair, the federal government and governments in general were great to all our organizations during the pandemic.
Sure.
Coming out is harder.
Yeah,
that's what's hard.
Yeah.
Now we came out very successfully, as did Calgary and Vancouver did, but they face a particular set of circumstances out there. But it's healthy, but they are a canary in the coal mine that to say, hey, we can't take the high costs like Live Nation can. So we'll see. They're very precious. They're community, they're community bred. So hopefully the community in Vancouver can come together in some way. There's just a couple of ideas. You have to do something as a festival if you want to keep going. Sure, you may not do the festival where you did it, by the ocean and all that beautiful, but you do something because you say to the funders, hey, no government's going to want to give you money and then the event didn't happen. So you do something to keep it going so you can hold on to funding and move on to the next year. That's the first step. Second step then is, okay, how do you go forward if you're going to do, a festival this year? And again, you need some people to come forward.
Can you see a day when the Edmonton Folk Festival would be the Toyota Folk Festival, the Toyota Edmonton Folk Festival, or McDonald's or A&W or whoever has that money to throw?
Well, not in my day. I've never looked for a title sponsor. I've always turned them down. Not that they've been beating our, the way to the door. But we probably could have gone out and found one. I think it's the Edmonton Folk Music Festival for a reason, and same with Vancouver or Winnipeg or anything. Some people have title sponsors, but it doesn't bang you on the head. If it comes to that or not surviving, but I think the option is to if you're not bringing in enough money from the people, then you get smaller. And then, that's a painful process. Edmonton's only grown over the last 30 years, but we've reached a certain size. We're not growing anymore. And have been there for a good 10 years. Although it looks like more people are coming down. Maybe there's more free tickets coming down. We're not selling any more tickets. So, as long as we're, I think people know they're proud of the fact that it's in their town. They're proud that it's in Winnipeg.
Sure.
They're proud of the history, and same in Vancouver. So you never want someone to take over the name. The name's not for sale, and nothing goes above the name of the folk festival. Some people get their T-shirts sponsored by. Look, sponsorship is a thing. It helps keep prices lower. How far you want to go with it, to a large extent, depends on the financial situation of the festivals. I know the other Western festivals have a surplus, and that's how they fund their operations.
Yeah.
But it's always a risk. What happens with climate change? Smoke could roll in, and we're responsible for the weather. If the artists are there and ready to play, we have to pay them. That's just the way it goes. We take all the risk. They take a certain risk going on tour as well, and they have to make money. But if you talk to people who are renting tour buses, they say it's crazy now what it costs.
Some of the same crisis, Terry Wickham, by the way, the producer and GM and artistic director, Edmonton Folk Festival. The music business, I'm keeping a very close eye on, and my heart to the ground as to what portions cannot survive and what can survive. What kind of an artist do you have to be? How much do you have to tour? Do you record? Are you self-contained? It's going through changes. What do you expect this music business will look like 5 years from now?
Well, I used to always think, the Edmonton Folk Festival would be around for the next 5 years, and I hope we will be. So I hope on my little, little ecosystem that I work within, folk festivals, I hope they're around for 5 years. I hope they're around for 50 years. I'm not as confident as I used to be, just because changes are so rapid that, newspapers went away, all sorts of things can go away. I don't know. When do people run out of money? When do the visa bills get too high? When do festivals, like big destination festivals, kind of go, oh, we can't afford to go? But I talked to people in Australia that were at a festival, and it was $600 for tickets, and then they were renting a place, and all the friends were meeting, and beer was $13 or $11, and that was years ago. And whatever T-shirts were, and they were loving it, and they'd meet their friends every year. And so what? They blow $5,000 or $6,000 in their minds. I mean, I'm counting accommodation, maybe it's $5,000, and they're all happy with it. It's their big blowout. As long as people want to pay those prices, then people will do it. And that particular festival has a huge lineup, so in fairness, it's probably a pretty good deal for $500 or $600. In generally. I don't know where the business is going. I think the natural thing is for things to go to the center. I know they always say, well, the economy hates monopoly, and other people will break in, and there are some new ticket systems. One thing I know is this is a good thing. There's always a huge amount of talent out there in the world, from all around the world. The amount of musical talent that I have turned down year to year because there's so much, it baffles me. How they can all make a living, I don't know. I hope people will get, increasingly, I think there's a human need for people to gather. I wish it didn't cost them $300 or $400 or $200 to do that, and to celebrate great music. I don't see prices going down for that because, big cities, people will pay it. And big events like Coachella, it's a destination thing. It's a memory-making thing. And a lot of people have a lot of money, and a lot of people are inheriting a lot of money. It doesn't take a majority of people. 10% of people can dominate, travel, tourism. And it's kind of a bit depressing, but it's amazing what people will pay for tickets. So I don't see that changing.
How much, I'll just ask this question, and don't yell at me. How much do current conditions affect your artistic choices in the lineup?
We pay fairly. We know what the market holds. We know we can calculate what a person would make in a concert in Edmonton. We will sometimes multiply that by 2, but we won't multiply it by 5. And again, there's a huge amount of talent. We have made a name in Edmonton, for instance, on bringing in a lot of big headliners. But if that goes away, or it gets to be, if where the rubber hits the road is it affordable for families to come down to our festival?
Sure.
And first and foremost, we want to have an affordable festival for people. So if fees for the big names go up too much, then they just won't come in.
Yeah.
But there's a huge amount of talent out there that is not getting enough work because maybe they just can't pull that tour together. And I'm always confident of getting great music from around the world. There's always great folk music and many other types of music. The amount of music out there is staggering. So yeah. So, and if we had to shrink down to 12,000 people a day instead of 14, well, then we'd have to make that adjustment.
How's Calgary and Canmore doing? I think they'll be okay.
Yeah, they're all healthy, as is Winnipeg. I haven't heard of any festivals in trouble. Doing a festival out of town is even more expensive. Grand Prairie is a new experiment. They don't have really much or any government funding because they don't, they want you to prove yourself first. So it's frustrating because if they had funding, they wouldn't be, it wouldn't be such a gamble for them. But they're gambling every year. But they have a strong lineup this year, so I wish them well. That's the only one that there's been a watch on. But they've beaten the odds so far, and they're hopefully coming into a very strong year. But no, I haven't. I would hear if those festivals, like folk festivals, in trouble. Vancouver was a particular set of circumstances in how expensive it is to operate there, and kind of the lack of support they get from, I think, 2 levels of government anyway.
Well, and they had debt going in. They were building up their debt, actually. and
Well, my understanding
the
is
smallest artistic budget they'd had in years.
well, I understand that they're scared of losing money. I get that because you don't have any money.
Yep.
My understanding is that they probably don't have any debt now. They've had very good fiscal management in there for the last few years. Now, I could be surprised. I'm not privy to their books, but my understanding is they don't have debt now. The problem is going forward. It's such an expensive show to go on. You know, where do you create? Sure, it'd be great to have an artistic budget for Vancouver of 1.2 million, but how do you create that? Where does that come from? Out of thin air? What happens if it rains all 3 days and you spent all that money?
It's
right?
Vancouver, sir. It doesn't rain.
Yeah. So, so it's a risk. So, it's going to take some people to move forward to take a risk to do that, I think. I mean, I'm only going by their own press release that says we need $500,000 cash here in cash flow to move forward with any kind of confidence. And I understand that because they did an amazing job last year to get it going. I mean, I hear things behind the scenes. I know how hard they worked. They certainly were not overstaffed. They're understaffed. They got people working 3 jobs, and it's all hands on deck.
Terry Wickham, when do you announce your lineup for 2023?
We're unusual. We're going to wait till May 24th. We go on sale on the 3rd of June. I know some year it might trip us up. Hopefully it won't. But as long as it works for us, we don't want people to buy tickets at Christmas because you want to buy Christmas presents. So, they know it's coming around. You can save up the money. It's still, $209 plus service charges and taxes to get a weekend pass. You buy 2 of them, and then you buy for one teenager. Maybe you've got a kid or 2 coming in for free. It's still a chunk of change for a family. So we don't like to collect too early. We'll announce in late May, 24th, I believe. It's a Wednesday. And then we'll go on sale on the first Saturday in June, which I believe is June 3rd. And last year it was really popular. But I knew last year, to be honest, it was a 1 in 15 year. It's just everything came together. We won't, and the deals were there. For whatever reason, people stuck to old deals, but that's gone. So I'm not saying it'll never happen again, but it's not going to be easy. But I'm really happy with the lineup this year, as I'm sure all the Canadian festivals also have great lineups. So it's a cost thing right now that's put Vancouver in trouble.
I do agree with you on one thing that just makes sense to me. This is a world of music. There are Canadian artists doing European festivals on a regular basis, and it should work in the opposite direction. There's just lots of choices, so hopefully it'll all work out this year.
Well, it's a fairly definitive statement from them. The board's looked at it. So unless something really changes on the money side of things, then it's not going to run this year. And then I would fear for it running at all unless they do a limited kind of thing. Okay. But, fortune favors the brave. I don't pretend to know what's going to fix Vancouver, but I know they have to do something this year if they're going to save it in the long term. And I think if they kind of got someone that believed in the festival and came in and did a fundraising concert for them, well, they can't lose. So I would try that anyway and see if they can. If they have the festival running, can't remember the name of the park now.
A mere supposition.
I've only been there lots of times, but it's a beautiful park by the beach.
Okay.
So if they are up and running and doing that again, then I would try and get a fundraising concert on a Thursday night and see if you can only if you can convince an artist to help you out with not play for nothing, but take a chance with this. And if it sells, like a Sarah McLachlan or something, then everybody does well. And it might save a festival.
Just a last question here, Terry. If they throw in the towel and say we're done, can someone else come along and create a next version of a Vancouver Folk Festival in some capacity?
There are crazy people born every minute, I guess. But I wouldn't try it. If you can't keep the one that's up and running with all that history running, and I don't see where you could start a new one. Something else might start, but it won't be a folk festival in the nature of the Vancouver Folk Festival. Okay. I don't believe. No, when they're gone, and that's like that Joni Mitchell line. You don't know what you got till it's gone. Yeah. Maybe people will rally around, but I think it's not going to take. It's not going to just the whole community would and will, but it's not going to take that. It's going to take some individuals that are going to step forward and say, "I believe in this to this tune, to this amount of money." Right? they'd be hard and cold about it because that's what they were saying. Unless we have $500 million going forward, we can't operate in the current business climate.
You know, I should have started this conversation by saying to you, because I care, are you well? Are you safe? Did you get through
Yes,
this?
I'm well.
Yep.
Yeah, I haven't got even had my 5 vaccinations. Haven't gotten
Okay.
COVID. I've been a little travel shy. I haven't felt like going anywhere. I've missed conferences. Find we do research here, but I'll go to a concert. I'll go to a restaurant. Get around. I'm a grandfather now. About to be a grandfather the second time.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. They were just there last night for supper. So yeah, the festival had a record year. We got that great lineup. We got great weather. So that has a big impact. It was nice to come back because you're coming back after 3 years, not one. It's always a year. People think, oh, you missed 2 years, but no, it's 3 years since we did it, and it was the same for every festival. So it was like pushing through water at times, and interpersonal relationships are very strained, I find. In person, but we were able to work in person. We didn't have any big outbreaks. We're lucky that we're outdoors. As I say, the weather was great, the lineup was great, the audience was great. We're struggling with the amount of people coming down. We got rid of the beer tent, and now everybody walks around. So it seems like there's more people walking around. Yeah, because there aren't 4,000 people contained in the beer tent. So we've got some things we have to look at.
Okay. Finally, you sometimes surprise me by teasing the lineup by doing a one-word answer. Sometimes you say it's interesting, or it's surprising, or whatever. Can you give me a word to describe this next festival lineup?
Oh, foxy lineup. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's in progress. It's a jigsaw puzzle.
Okay, fine. As is life itself. Thank you for this. What's your website?
www.edmontonfolkfest.org. I always put the 3 letters in first.
And what's your opening date?
We're August 10 to 13 this year. Okay. Calgary is usually a couple of weeks before us. Vancouver is usually 3 weeks before us. Winnipeg is usually 5 weeks before. So they're early. We're kind of mid-August, and Winnipeg will be early July, and that kicks off the kind of our season out west anyway.
We wish you the best. You know that.
Well, thank you. Appreciate all the support. Yeah, I mean, it's like CKUA. Everything is we all have to chip into this together, make sure it works.
We do.
So yeah.
Some years hard.
They're very all these kind of community organizations like CKUA. They're very important. If they go away, they don't come back. That's the history. So I'm hoping for Vancouver. It's not beyond the realm of possibility that maybe 3 or 4 Western festivals could get together and help them out. It's not going to save them, but maybe if we're doing well enough, maybe a few festivals could step in too and say, okay, well, we'll risk this for you, see what happens.
I hope they reach out to you, Terry, very much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It'd be more a question if we reach out to them. They won't. I wouldn't expect them to reach out.
Be the best grandfather you can possibly be. Okay.
Thank you very much, Terry.
Thank you, mate.
Anytime.
Thank you.
All the best.
My thanks to Terry Wickham, Edmonton Folk Festival. And just a reminder, you can see this interview on our YouTube channel, Terry David Mulligan YouTube. Now, one of the highlights of my year is hearing the announcement of who's coming to the Edmonton Folk Fest. It's a big deal. And he books really smart, really well. Next week, our guest will be Booker T. Jones Jr., the man who was Booker T. in the MGs, who led the house band at Stax Volt in Memphis, who worked in the studio with Wilson Pickett and Sam and Dave and Eddie Floyd and the Staple Singers and Albert King and Otis Redding. So many stories. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, played the White House, wrote songs, wrote a book, Time is Tight. He's still out there, and as a matter of fact, he's playing a show in Calgary on the 25th February at Jack Singer Hall with a 10-piece Stax Soul Review. He's still up and at 'em. So Booker T next week on the Mulligan Stew podcast. And if you like what we're doing, please subscribe. It all helps. Thank you.